Hey everyone. So today I'm doing something a little bit different. The last couple videos, if you've watched them, you've kind of seen this theme that they are a bit more psychological, philosophical, theological, kind of trying to get you deep thinking and brainstorming, all that kind of stuff. But one of the biggest things that I get asked almost every day on my Instagram, my Facebook, all that stuff, is people ask me, how do you get started in writing? And so I've spent the last couple days really trying to mull this over because I'm trying to even understand how I got started in it. It went from me never writing something really in my life outside of being forced to in an English course to picking up writing poetry, and within a year I had been published multiple times over things that I didn't even think I could do. This goes back to that video that I was talking about, that you just gotta do stuff and figure out if you can or you can't, because sometimes you never know if you're good at something until you do it, and then you gain that knowledge, and that knowledge is your power. Kind of mixing my videos here. Anyway, so as I thought about it and I kind of really delved into it about how I got started in what I did, I will give you a couple tips of what helped me along the way. Now, this only applies to me and to the idea of writing poetry. If you're looking for someone to teach you how to write things like short stories or novels, this is not the video for you, because I absolutely suck at writing those things. I am terrible. I have only written like 1 or 2 short stories in my life, and while people said they were both really good, I have a hell of a time trying to figure out how to write them. It takes me a very long time to piece together something so small, and a novel is completely out of this world for me. I can come up with great ideas for a novel, but I can't even figure out how to write the first sentence. So we are sticking with the idea of poetry, or just kind of writing and ranting and expression. Now, the number one golden rule is going to be kind of funny, because it is essentially going to contradict my entire video beyond that point, but it needs to be pointed out and spoken because it is absolutely the number one golden rule. And this you will hear in just about everything in life, which is number one, be yourself. I understand you may have people out there that are writers that you absolutely love and adore their style. You love everything about what they write about. You love everything about them. So naturally, when you start to write, you think, I kind of want to write like them. It doesn't work. I'm sorry. You cannot copy somebody else's style. It is not your style, it is their style. You cannot mimic it. And it will be blatantly obvious to everyone who reads your work that this is not you. You're not getting the full capacity of your writing out because you are trying to follow in somebody else's footsteps and trying to mimic somebody that you adore, and you are stifling yourself. You are holding yourself back because you cannot mimic somebody else. The only way you can write is to write the way you will write, and you will discover your style and you will take off from there. That is how it works. Now, I say don't mimic anyone else's writings. I also say do not listen to anyone else when they try to tell you how to write, for that reason alone, because everyone is going to tell you this is how you are supposed to write because that's how they began writing and they think that's the right way to do it. So this is where the rest of the video kind of becomes contradictory, because I'm sitting here telling you the things I did to help me start writing, even though I'm telling you don't listen to anyone else but yourself. But this is not me trying to tell you what you should and shouldn't do. This is me telling you what I did in the hopes that maybe it could trigger some ideas for you on what you can do. Now, one of the biggest things, rule number 2, that I came up with is pay attention to yourself, your thought patterns, your behaviors throughout the day. Keep a log if you need to, keep a journal, whatever. You will start to notice a pattern that there are certain times of day or certain places you may be in, scenarios or locations or certain people you are around. There are all these variables and circumstances that will alter how you feel. Now, depending on what you want to write about, you want to try and find that point in the day that you feel that particular emotion the strongest. Most of my writing comes very late at night when I am sitting around just laying in bed or something and I am alone with my thoughts, and those thoughts start to really become clear, and so I start writing them down in the notes section of my phone. Could be anything. Maybe you have the best ideas for your writing when you're at work. Maybe when you're out walking your dog. Maybe you get it from your dreams. I have a lot of my writing that comes from my dreams. I have been a very vivid dreamer since I was a little kid. My dreams are very, very organized, and I remember them very clearly, and they can come up with some pretty good ideas for writing. Maybe you get your best ideas when you are bored at work, when you're with somebody you like a friend or a significant other, or a family member, a parent, a dog, a cat, a horse. Keep track of how you feel throughout the day in every circumstance, in every scenario that you go through throughout the day, and find that point that really strikes you as the best time for your brainstorming and your thought processes to come up with the ideas on what you want to write about. And by being able to identify these and identifying multiple types of these throughout the day, you can alter what it is you write about, because you may focus on a different part of you, of a different part of the day that feels a different way, that writes about something different. Maybe there's a part of you in the day that is very joyful and happy, and so your poetry is going to be very cheery. There may be a part in your day where you tend to be a little bit less happy. Maybe you get a little sad or depressed or anxious, and so your poetry is a little bit more dramatic, etc., 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 whatever. For me, rule number 3, speed is of the essence. Obviously, not for everybody. Probably not for most people. Most people like to take their time. They sit down, they really delve into these thoughts of theirs, and they really think long and hard before they start writing something. I'm the complete opposite. My readers and my viewers, they pretty much label me as the guy who writes purely raw poetry, which is true. Do you want to write raw poetry, stuff that is just straight out of your head and is very relatable to some people? Or are you more interested in spicing up your poetry and making it prettier and, sweeter, nicer, whatever? We all have our own style. Figure out which one you like the best. Mine is raw. So when I get an idea about a poem or something I want to write about, I start immediately, if I can. Obviously, if I'm in the middle of something like a surgery, I cannot stop what I'm doing and start writing a poem. I just keep it in the back of my head until I have time. But if you are free, stop what you are doing, start writing. It may be sloppy, it may look like shit, it may make zero sense whatsoever to anyone but you. You can refine it later. Just get it out of your head, get it on something. Paper, in your phone, your computer, iPad, anything that can hold this idea before you forget it. Speed is of the essence. Me, everything that I write is thought up and written within 15 minutes. That is my style. I do not sit there and take the time to pretty it up over hours or days or whatever. The second that thought hits my head, I sit down, pull my phone out, pull up the notes, start writing, and it is done within 15 minutes or less. That is my style. That keeps my writing raw. It keeps it very emotional, very real. And it is not focused on being pretty. It is about being focused on helping people identify with it and helping people understand that they are not alone in feeling these certain feelings. When you try to pretty up something into poetry, it may look beautiful and it may flow well and people may love it for how fantastic it seems, but it may not be relatable. All these old poets that I read, I can't relate with them at all. People like Robert Frost. The guy is a legend for poetry. He is legendary for how well his poems are written, how well they are prettied up, how well they flow. But they do not resonate with me at all. Because it is just the way he writes it just does not click with me. I don't care about the big fancy words and the flow. I care about what is understandable and what is relatable. Next rule number 4. Just sit down and start writing. This is something that you should just be doing every day. A lot of people do this with journals or diaries or, any form of getting thoughts out of their head. Just do it every night or whatever the time is that you tend to have that most creative part of your brain functioning. That is the time that you should sit down, pull out some form of way to get those thoughts out on paper and just write down what is in your head, what pops up first, and just keep going. This isn't going to be your final draft. This isn't going to be your poem. This is just going to be you getting ideas out of your head onto paper to help you focus on later. You need to get that information out. If you try to hold on to it in your head, it's eventually going to disappear as new things pop up. Us as humans, we think we are very smart. We think we are brilliant. We are actually quite dumb. We forget things very easily unless it is very important to us. And something like an idea popping up in your head and becoming something you want to write about It may be important to you, but it is still going to vanish if you don't get it out quick enough. It will get buried under all the other crap that you got to do throughout the day that takes precedence and priority over that quick little thought that you had pop in your head earlier that day. So get it out, get it on some form of in the physical realm for you to refer to later. Then you can start building on that. You could start looking over it and seeing what it is you like about it, what parts of it make sense, what parts of it you want to focus on, and that's where you start building upon the poem. This is where you're going to discover your style. Once you start piecing all this stuff together, all these thoughts, that is when you're going to start realizing what your style is. Are you the type that likes to be very raw and straight up? Are you going to be the type that has an idea and writes a poem very quickly and very straightforward? Or are you the type that likes to make the poetry very beautiful? And so you take your time and you refine it and you write draft after draft. And with each draft, you may change up a few words here and there, or change up a few lines to help make the poem flow better, to read better, to look better, to have better words in it to describe what it is you're trying to get across. This is the point where you will start to understand what your style is, and you will start to build off of that. Next one. Next rule. Practice. Simple as that. Practice, practice, practice. Anytime you have one of these thoughts that clicks with you, that you think, hey, I might want to write something about this, write it down. Think about it. Practice. Even if it turns out to be a draft of a poem that you never finish, or one that you never even share. I have probably hundreds of drafts of poems that I came up with that I never shared. They are still kind of in that development phase. I haven't forgotten about them. They're just sitting on my computer or sitting on my phone, half done, until maybe one day my mind clicks with something that reminds me, hey, I got a poem kind of like this. And I go back to it. But now I've got a new perspective because it's been a while. Maybe something has happened in my life. Something has changed. My perspective has changed. Suddenly, this poem is something I can finally finish. But the number one thing is practice, practice, practice. Even if it never gets done or finished. With every time you practice on writing a poem, you get better. And not only will you get better, you will slowly start to discover your process, what it is you do when you want to write. When is your peak time of the day that you get the best ideas? When do you feel like you have the best time to write something that really resonates? When do you start to feel like you have the time to sit down and practice and build upon the skill set and get better? Finally, the very last thing, simple. Don't take it too seriously. Writing is not meant to be some life or death situation where somebody's got a gun to your head telling you to write. Writing is supposed to be fun. It is supposed to be you finding a way to express your feelings, your emotions, your thoughts. Those things in your head that you may have always thought had no words for them. You could not explain them. You could not describe them to anyone else because those thoughts were your thoughts and there was no way to express them and make people understand. you develop this skill set, you start to realize that every thought in your head can be expressed in some way or another through writing. Sometimes it comes out all jumbled and crazy, and you seem like a complete nut job because you're trying to express something from your head that a lot of people just won't understand. But most of the stuff that you will try to express, people will truly understand it. And there will be a lot more people than you think that will actually understand what you are trying to say. And a lot of them will appreciate it very much, that you took the time to express these thoughts and put them on some sort of paper or a computer somewhere in the physical realm for somebody to see and read, that they click with, and it makes them feel like, oh, this isn't just a problem or a thing. I deal with this. This is obviously something other people deal with. I am not alone in the world. I am not alone in dealing with this problem. And you will be surprised how many people you help through something as simple as you taking the time to express those thoughts that you have in your head and putting them on paper, even if it is not pretty. If you look at my Instagram and you look at my poetry, you will see that most of my poetry is not pretty. It is very straightforward. Occasionally, it might get spruced up a little bit. It might get tidied up a little bit, might make it a little bit prettier. But for the most part, the stuff that resonates the most with the people who read my stuff, who publish my stuff, it is the very raw, realistic stuff that people can relate to. They just didn't know how to express it themselves until they saw you express it. And they went, holy shit, that is exactly how I feel. I can actually see in words, this is how I feel. And holy shit, look at all these other people that say, yeah, I feel the same way. Suddenly you realize life is not so lonely when it comes to your struggles. There are lots of people out there that go through the same things you do. They may not talk about it, they may not express it, but they go through it. And there is occasionally going to be those people who are going to write about it and let the rest of you know that you are not alone in this world. So, that is my suggestion on how to get started with writing poetry. That is not everything. That is your beginner's course. Once you get to the point where you figure out your form, your style, that is when it really takes off, because that is when you are going to really hone in the skill of what is best for you and your readers. And before you know it, if you're not shy and you brave it and you share your writing with people, you will realize how many people click with what you have to say. When I started writing poetry, I didn't think anybody was gonna like it at all. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was just something I was doing to get thoughts out of my head to make me feel better. Then somebody said, you know what? I've seen some of your work. It's really good. Why don't you share it and see if anyone else likes it? Within a year, I had been published multiple times. And I found out I really enjoy writing. It's something I do that clears my head, and it makes me feel better knowing that the things that I come up with, that my followers read, it helps them a little bit here and there, depending on what I'm writing about. I write all over the spectrum. Sometimes my writing is very optimistic and encouraging and empowering. Other times it is very dark and depressing and bleak and sad. And sometimes it's anywhere in between. You don't have to force yourself to stick to one type of subject or one type of poetry, one form of poetry. To begin with, you should Focus on one thing you're very passionate about. Focus on discovering your form, discovering your style, and build upon that. But as you get better, you will realize that you can branch out into multiple styles, multiple forms, multiple topics. It just takes practice. Anyway, that is my 25-minute rant about the idea of how to get started with writing. I wish I could tell you how to get started with creative writing when it comes to short stories and books and novels and all that stuff. Unfortunately, I can't because I am awful at that. I spent like 4 years trying to write a novel and got like half a chapter done. The idea was there in my head. I had it all planned out. It's still there in my head. I know it would make a great story, but I can't get it out of my head and put it on paper in a way that people would understand, because I don't know how to do that. I try to create dialogue, it sounds forced. I try to create this world that is in my head and put it on paper. It doesn't make sense. So I'm sorry, I can't help you with those. If anyone out there that's watching this is good at that kind of stuff, I would encourage you to either comment or post or make a video of your own and link it so that people like me and other people that may want to learn a little bit more about creative writing, we might get some tips to help us get a little bit better at it. I hope you all have a great day. And until next time, whatever the hell it is that I'm going to be ranting about, I don't know yet. I'll figure it out tonight and I'll post something tomorrow. But for now, everyone, please be good, my friends. Be good, and I will see you next time.